You are not crazy, but someone is actively working to make you believe you are. There is a silent, ongoing attack on your perception of reality, a psychological pattern designed to systematically undermine your confidence and shift all responsibility back onto you. Have you ever felt utterly confused after a debate? Have you been absolutely certain of an event, only to be convinced minutes later that it never happened, or that your memory is a faulty piece of hardware? This is not a cognitive malfunction, this is a code of manipulation. The kind of manipulation that destroys lives doesn't rely on brute force. It relies on confusion. It targets your most sacred fortress, your mind. Society teaches us to defend against physical threats, yet leaves us completely unarmed against the thief of our sanity. This specific pattern, known globally as gaslighting, is not accidental. It is a silent strategy used by the elite of covert manipulators to ensure their total dominance. The truth is that the victim of this attack is often a high-intelligence, high-empathy individual, whose inherent quest for logic and justice is weaponized against them. They know you will try to prove your point, and it is in that precise attempt that you lose all leverage. You are forced to burn energy trying to convince a ghost that it exists. Today, you will receive the tactical antidote. I am going to reveal the 3 exact phrases that, when deployed against you, are a classified signal that your reality is being hijacked. These phrases form the core code that 99% of people ignore, accepting confusion as fault and debilitating exhaustion as simple fatigue. You will exit the survivor mode of self-doubt and enter the master mode, the one who sees the entire chessboard before the first move is even made. What you are about to discover will permanently shield your mind against the most dangerous threat to your integrity. From this moment forward, your attention belongs not to the manipulator, but entirely to your own liberation. The diagnosis. The first truth to accept is chilling. The manipulator is not merely seeking to win an argument. They are seeking your total psychological disintegration. Their mind operates as a system of fractured mirrors, where the only path to feeling control is through the implosion of your stability. The manipulator functions from a position of deep internal scarcity. They must steal your sense of wholeness to fill the void of their own fragmented identity. And the most efficient way to commit this theft is by forcing you to doubt your own judgment, making you utterly dependent on them to define what is true and real. Your career ascent and professional survival become an emotional minefield, and you cannot even trust your own internal map. Your mind, while trapped in survivor mode, undergoes 4 distinct stages of silent decay under this psychic assault. 1. Factual erosion. You compulsively recheck old emails and messages for proof. 2. Core self-doubt. You start questioning your own character and moral intentions. 3. Strategic isolation. You cease sharing events with trusted third parties, terrified of sounding crazy or dramatic, and losing your last social lifeline. 4. Chronic anxiety and freeze. The cognitive cost of defense becomes so exorbitant that your body and mind enter a state of permanent exhaustion and crippling paralysis of action. This is the baseline existence of the survivor. You are perpetually unsure of past conversations, confirmed deadlines, or if your emotional reaction is even justified. You are reduced to a mental archaeologist, constantly digging in the archives of the past to validate what you instinctively know is true. Visualize your mental energy as a high-performance battery. The survivor spends 80% of that charge on memory verification and self-justification protocols. This constant cognitive overload drains the most valuable asset you possess, the ability to plan, innovate, and execute long-term goals. This deficit is your strategic exhaustion. The manipulator forces you to hemorrhage your potential on defense rather than investing it in advancement. The cumulative toll of gaslighting is catastrophic. It doesn't appear as a bloody wound, but as a nebulous chronic anxiety that suffocates creativity. The survivor begins the slow process of self-silencing. Your subconscious learns to avoid risk, suppress creative urges, and preemptively surrender to avoid confrontation, because the punishment is not defeat. It is the loss of sanity itself. You become conditioned to seek external validation, and this relentless chase keeps the prison door locked. The fault is never the manipulator's, because acknowledging fault would require them to face the terrifying vacuum of their own identity. The fault is always yours. You are labeled hypersensitive, overly dramatic, or someone who simply forgot what was clearly said. Over time, this destroys careers, relationships, and silently, your soul. The core problem is not the initial offense. The core problem is the denial of the offense. When your established reality is denied, you lose the foundational logic for any rational decision-making. This state is designed to induce learned helplessness, convincing you there is no viable exit, and that the only remaining comfort is submission to the narrator of the imposed reality. From that point on, you are playing their game, following the rules of pure emotion, and they always win. The bridge. The survivor's reactive mind, upon realizing the gaslighting, instinctively asks the wrong questions. How do I make them stop? Or, how do I convince them that I am right? But this is the final brilliant trap. Seeking justice or recognition from a manipulator is precisely like attempting to fill a sieve with water. You waste precious time chasing validation, a currency they will never freely give you. The survivor tries to defeat the narcissist with logic. The narcissist smiles because their game is fundamentally emotional. They win because you are still standing on their emotional battlefield. The desperate search for external validation is the last weakest link in your chain. You are begging for a crumb of honesty from someone whose sustenance comes solely from lies. This is the non-negotiable turning point. The fault is not yours for falling into the cycle, but the responsibility to exit it is exclusively yours. Accepting this responsibility is the true first act of mastery. You cannot change their behavior. It is an external variable. You can change the game board you operate on. The bridge to the master mode is not built on petty retaliation, but on becoming invulnerable to energy drainage. The only response that works is the one that isn't a response at all. Silent emotional dominion. The master understands that the real war is contained entirely within your own skull. The ultimate key to dominion is the dichotomy of control, the Stoic mandate. Do not spend 1 second of energy on anything outside your sphere of influence. The manipulator's actions are outside your control. Your reaction, your focus, and your documentation are 100% within it. If you consistently fail to provide the emotional reaction they need, if you present yourself as a cold, unresponsive wall of indifference, they will starve, and their toxic game will lose its fundamental meaning. The master does not react. They observe. They assume the role of a scientist analyzing a predictable experiment, calmly noting the patterns without getting involved in the emotional chaos of the outcome. The master operates with the calm assurance of one who has seen the complete game, understands the adversary's fatal weaknesses, and has no personal need to prove anything to anyone. Your energy will no longer be spent validating your worth, but building your own mental empire, light years away from their shadow. The manipulator at their core is an emotional parasite. They survive by feeding on your confusion and your desperate attempts to explain or defend yourself. When you strategically remove the source of nutrition, your emotion and your search for approval, you effectively deactivate them. The manipulator fears silence. They fear indifference. They fear you will stop providing the fuel. Their fear, once recognized, becomes your greatest leverage. The transition to dominion is built on the pillars of tactical stoicism. The master expends 100% of their finite energy only within their circle of control. The manipulator only retains power over what you permit them to control. The master seals off access to their mind and begins to project their own reality from within. The protocol dominion commences with the recognition of the attack signature. These are the 3 exact phrases that confirm the gaslighting attack is in full effect. Each phrase represents a distinct level of escalation in the attempt to hijack your mind. Phrase 1. I never said that. You're remembering it wrong. This is absolute denial. The objective here is memory erosion. The manipulator is aggressively rewriting history, instantly invalidating your factual testimony. The impact is immediate. You begin to wonder if the problem is organic, if you are genuinely losing the capacity to record data accurately. Their ultimate goal is not merely to make you forget, but to fully disqualify you as a reliable witness, isolating your credibility within your social or professional circle. The master's antidote: the zero response. The master never debates reality. They never enter a battlefield they did not personally create. The verbal response is decisive silence immediately followed by action. You employ relentless documentation. This documentation is not intended for the manipulator. It is the critical anchor that stabilizes your own sanity. If this occurs at work, all essential communication must be immediately confirmed via email, formally recording the date and the promise. If in a personal setting, log it in a private file on your phone, with a timestamp. When confronted, use no more than 2 words. I have that documented, uttered without heat or emotion. Silence paired with cold, hard documentation is the maximum offense to the manipulator. They cannot argue against a documented fact without fully exposing their deceit. You become an undeniable logbook, and the master knows that evidence is not debated, it is presented. Phrase 2. Why are you so defensive, sensitive, dramatic? This is focus transfer. The objective here is the invalidation of emotion. The manipulator does not just deny the event, they deny your fundamental right to react to it. You may have had a perfectly logical, proportional reaction to a genuine offense, but they instantly twist it, turning your response into a personal character flaw. What they are executing is an act of blind projection. They are projecting their own instability and dysfunction directly onto you. The impact: you are forced to question your own emotional stability and your capacity for normal reactions, wasting valuable cognitive time on unnecessary destructive self-analysis. The master's antidote: cold acceptance and refusal to justify. The master acknowledges the criticism as merely an opinion without absorbing it as truth. You respond with an MR, the minimum effective response. Example: I understand you see it that way. Conversation terminated. For an even higher level of dominion, the master employs the gray rock tactic. You make yourself boring, uninteresting, and devoid of any emotional value to them. The response is short, vague, and factual. Understood. Noted. I'll take that into consideration. You do not justify your anger, your sadness, or your position. Your emotion is your private property, and you refuse to auction it off at the price of their approval, forcing the manipulator to desperately seek emotional fuel elsewhere. Phrase 3. If you really cared, you would do X. This is moral manipulation. The objective here is the hijacking of your identity. This phrase is deeply treacherous because it attacks your core sense of goodness, love, or commitment, pressuring you to comply with a demand against your will simply to prove you are a good person. The manipulator traps you in a non-existent moral debt, essentially using emotional blackmail to bypass your established boundaries. The master's antidote: silent reaffirmation of boundaries. The master operates strictly based on their own internal principles, never on imposed ones. The master possesses an internal contract of ethics and action, and this contract is non-negotiable. You do not engage in a debate about whether the phrase is fair. You simply reinforce your limit with complete calm. I fully understand your perspective, and I am accountable for my own actions. My decision remains. Or if it is an irrational professional demand, I can deliver that task, but we must immediately adjust priority Z. Which option takes precedence for you? You force the manipulator into a tactical, non-emotional resource dialogue, a game they cannot win because for them, emotional control is always more critical than the practical result. These 3 disarmament protocols demand a profound shift in identity. It is not about confrontation. It is about a subtle, powerful re-engineering of your outward behavior to force the manipulator to self-nullify their leverage over you. The covert narcissist fears silence, fears indifference, and desperately fears you will cut off their fuel supply. Their deepest fear, once understood, becomes your greatest leverage. The silent dominion. The hour of decision. This is what life looks like in the master mode. It is a life where your genius, your energy, and your time feed your own sovereign empire, never the corrosive mediocrity of another person. You now grasp the fundamental truth. The manipulator is not a static wall. They are a gate that demands a crippling toll: your energy, your dignity, and your sanity. The master resolutely refuses to pay that toll. The master walks beside the gate in complete silence and unshakable dominion. The revelation of the invisible code does not mark the end of your battle. It marks the initiation of your power. You are no longer the survivor who merely reacts to pain. You are the architect who designs their own destiny. You now possess the strategic knowledge that places you above the board. But raw knowledge without systematic application is merely information. The real defining gap between the survivor and the master is not what they know, but what they execute under pressure. What you have learned here is the vital first step toward silent dominion. But true, effortless application requires a daily tactical blueprint, a step-by-step guide to hardwire this theory into automatic reflexive behavior in just 7 days. You require a coded method to fully deprogram the survivor's ingrained reactions,